Somewhere in an American household, tucked away in an old coffee can or a forgotten drawer, sits a single coin worth upwards of $24,000. Visually, it is nearly indistinguishable from ordinary pocket change. The vast gap between a single cent and a small fortune isn't the physical metal itself, but the specialized information required to spot it, a secret most people were simply never taught. My name is Albert, and I've spent 40 years working coin shows, estate sales, and flea markets across this country, not as a dealer, but as a collector who kept his own cross-reference field notebooks because nobody in the industry was writing any of this down for ordinary people. I've sorted through more shoe boxes and coffee cans of wheat pennies than I can count, and the 1914D is the one coin in that entire series where I have watched the gap between knowing and not knowing cost real people real money right in front of me. Let me pause the count a moment. What years of sorting through old coins teaches a man does not fit inside one short video. I set the whole of it down in a book, on the QR code on screen, or the pinned comment with the link. Have a look, or carry on without it. That is my only word on it. This video is going to walk you through exactly what separates a genuine 1914D from the coins that get handed across flea market tables for face value every weekend. By the end, you will know what to look for, what the common fakes look like, and the one 5-point checklist that gives you a working basis to decide whether what you're holding deserves a second look. A Saturday morning at an estate sale in rural Indiana, sometime in the late 1980s, a shoebox of loose cents, priced at $1 for the whole box, sitting on a folding table next to a coffee maker and a stack of Reader's Digests. A dealer arrived an hour before the public opened, paid the $1, and left with the box under his arm. What he knew, and the family selling it did not, was that the mintage of the 1914D Lincoln Wheat cent was just over 1 million coins, which sounds like a substantial number until you understand that most of those were spent hard into circulation and worn to near illegibility within a decade of striking. The number that was made is almost irrelevant. What matters is the survival rate, how many came through a century of pocket change in a condition anyone would pay a premium for. And that number is very small. Mintage and survival are two entirely different things, and most people who inherit old coins have never heard the distinction. The Red Book and PCGS population reports both reflect this clearly. For the 1914D, the spread between a worn circulated example and a lightly circulated one represents thousands of dollars, not hundreds. Separation by date range is where all of this begins. Pull out any wheat pennies you have access to right now, or pick up a mixed lot at a local flea market for $1 or $2, and simply separate anything dated 1909 through 1934 from the rest. That is the window where high-value survivors concentrate. Don't try to grade them yet, just isolate them. Next time, we're going to talk about why isolating the right date is only half the problem, because finding a 1914D and owning a genuine 1914D are two very different things. A coin show in Ohio in the mid-1990s, a collector standing at a table, loop in hand, certain he had found a real 1914D, handing over $200 for a coin that had been carefully altered from a far more common date. The dealer on the other side of that table knew exactly what it was. The collector did not, because nobody had ever shown him what a genuine struck mint mark actually looks like under magnification versus one that was added by hand. This is where most people lose the game before it starts. The two most common alterations in circulation are a 1944D with the second 4 shaved and recut to resemble a 1, and a 1914 Philadelphia cent, no mint mark at all on the original, with a D added below the date. On a genuine 1914D, the D mint mark sits below the date, slightly left of center, and the metal flow around it matches the surrounding field. A struck mint mark has clean, sharp edges and consistent depth. An added or tooled mint mark will often show soft edges, disturbed metal in the field around it, or a slightly different surface texture than the rest of the coin. You can learn to see this. A 5-power or 10-power loop runs $3 to $8 at any coin show or online retailer. A professional grading submission to PCGS or NGC runs $30 to $50 at minimum, and that is before you know whether what you're holding is genuine. The loop comes first. Look at the mint mark on every Denver cent you own. Sharp edges, consistent depth, metal flow that matches the field. Those are your benchmarks. Soft edges or disturbed metal around the mark are the first red flags, and they cost nothing to check. The next thing you need to know is what honest wear looks like on one of these coins, and why a coin that looks uniformly dull is often more suspicious than one that looks worn. A flea market in Tennessee in the early 2000s, Albert is standing at a folding table across from a woman selling her late father's collection. 2 people that morning had already told her the coins were just old pennies. One of them was wearing a dealer badge. What those 2 people were counting on was her not knowing the difference between honest circulation wear and the flat, soapy surface of a coin that has been cleaned or artificially treated. On a Lincoln cent, the high points that wear first are Lincoln's cheekbone, the tips of the wheat stalks on the reverse, and the fine lettering. Genuine circulation wear shows gradual transitions, sharper in the protected areas, softer on the high points, and that pattern makes sense when you think about how a coin moves through a pocket or a cash drawer. A cleaned or buffed coin looks different. The fields carry fine hairline scratches running in the same direction, often visible only under a single raking light source, and the surface has an even, almost plastic flatness that honest wear never produces. Cleaning destroys collector value. Full stop. That has been the standard in serious numismatic circles for generations, documented in A&A grading standards and PCGS coin facts guidance. The knowledge faded not because it was hidden, but because it stopped being passed on. And the people who retained it continued to profit at the point of purchase. That is not a conspiracy. It is just how ordinary market incentives work. When one side of a transaction knows something, the other side was never taught. Hold any wheat penny under a desk lamp at a low angle tonight. Honest wear shows transitions. Cleaned coins show lines. You can train your eye to see the difference in 5 minutes with a coin you don't care about. Now I need to slow down here, because this next part is where most people lose money they didn't know they had. A coin show in Arizona in 2007, a man walks up to Albert's table carrying a 1914D that came out of his grandfather's dresser drawer. He wants to know what it's worth. Albert's first question is not about the coin's appearance. It is about how it has been stored, because what he is really asking is, has anyone touched this coin, cleaned it, or made a decision about it before understanding what grade means for this particular date? The difference between a 1914D graded fine 12 and the same coin graded very fine 20 is not a modest premium. Records from PCGS and NGC population reports, cross-referenced with Red Book retail values, show that spread can represent several $1,000s on a single coin. The grading landmarks on a Lincoln cent are specific: the hair detail above Lincoln's ear, the separation and definition of the individual wheat stalks on the reverse, the clarity of the motto lettering. These are what a professional grader is measuring. Every ungraded 1914D sold at a flea market or estate sale is negotiation where one party has a price guide and the other does not. That asymmetry is not accidental. It is structural, and it repeats itself every weekend at tables across this country. Before you sell any wheat penny from the high-value date range to a dealer, look up the PCGS Coin Facts page for that coin and note the retail value difference between the 2 grades on either side of where yours might plausibly fall. That lookup is free and takes 5 minutes. A dealer's opening offer on an ungraded coin is not. The next piece is the one I wish someone had handed me in writing 40 years ago. And here's the part nobody in this industry ever put in writing, because there was no percentage in doing so. A Heritage Auctions result from 2019. a 1914D Lincoln Cent in very fine condition, realizing a price that would have comfortably bought a decent used car. Records suggest that before reaching the auction block, this coin had reportedly passed through at least 2 sets of hands without being identified for what it was. Someone who knew what to look for stopped it. That person was using a checklist, whether they called it that or not, and over 40 years of sorting through boxes and bankrolls, I built mine down to 5 points, checked in order. First, date digit spacing and font consistency. Compare the numerals against known genuine examples from a reference like PCGS Coin Facts, because altered dates often show inconsistent spacing or slightly off letter forms. Second, mint mark position, shape, and surface character under magnification. Everything covered in the earlier piece applies here, but now you're looking at all 3 factors together, not just one. Third, wear pattern logic. Does the wear on the high points make sense for the overall surface, or does it look applied, too uniform, too convenient? Fourth, weight. A genuine Lincoln wheat cent weighs 3.11 grams, and a digital scale that reads to the 100th of a gram costs less than $10. Fifth, edge character. Altered coins often show evidence of tooling at the rim near the date or mint mark, a slight irregularity in the edge profile that honest coins don't carry. No single one of these checkpoints is conclusive on its own. All 5 together give you a working basis, not a final verdict, but enough to decide whether a professional grading submission is worth pursuing. Print this list, write it down, keep it with your loupe. You now own the whole system. Here is what a prepared collector does from the moment a suspected 1914D appears in their hands. They isolate it by date range first. Anything 1909 through 1934 gets separated and looked at carefully. They put a loupe on the mint mark and check position, edge sharpness, and surface character against the field around it. They hold the coin under a single raking light and read the wear pattern for logic. Does it make sense, or does it look applied? They weigh it against the published specification. They check the edge near the date and mint mark for signs of tooling. And before anyone makes an offer, they spend 5 minutes on PCGS Coin Facts understanding what grade range their coin might fall into and what the spread looks like in dollars. That sequence costs nothing except a $3 loupe and a $10 scale, and it is the same sequence the people on the other side of those flea market tables have been running for decades. This knowledge is not complicated. It never was. It lives in A&A resources, in PCGS documentation, in numismatic journals that have been sitting on library shelves for 50 years. It stopped being passed on, not because anyone locked it away, but because there was no profit in the passing. And that is its own kind of answer about how information moves in a market. What you have now is not a collector's trick. It is ordinary competence that was quietly allowed to become uncommon, and you have taken it back. Sort your wheat pennies tonight. Separate anything dated 1909 through 1934. Put a loupe on every Denver cent in that range. That is where the system begins, and you now know how it ends. Next time, we are going to look at another Lincoln cent date, one that is even easier to overlook than the 1914D, where the real danger is not a fake, but something the United States Mint itself did that most collectors still do not fully understand.